Hi, everyone. Welcome to another week of O-Ship. I happen to have yet another one of my very interesting friends on this week, a gentleman called Otto Othman. Otto has a really compelling story. I met him years ago when we worked at Sapient, where he was a senior interactive art director in one of the largest digital agencies in the world. And I would have never guessed when I met him back then that he was going to turn out to be this just incredible entrepreneur. While he was at Sapient, he started a restaurant chain called PINCHO Factory, now known as PINCHO. And for any of you who may be watching that have lived in South Florida, visited South Florida, you've probably seen one of the PINCHO restaurants around. And he was literally birthing this while doing this full-time job at an interactive agency. And we're going to get a lot into that story today. Since then, he also founded and sold another business called Night Pro that built kind of software management for handling guests at nightclubs. But in his journey at PINCHO, he started off as the co-founder and CMO, and then recently ended up becoming the CEO about 3 months before COVID happened. So if you haven't got a classic O-Ship story, I don't think it gets much better than this. It's an incredible journey of how he's conquered probably some reservations and uncertainties he's had about himself to leap into some incredible situations and frankly execute on them with some incredible success. And with that, we've got another week of O-Ship that I title From Burgers to Big Business, Conquering Your Fear as a Leader. Otto, welcome to the show. It's so good to see you here.
Likewise, brother. Thanks for having me, man. Exciting.
Yeah. It's Again, I hope my intro did you justice. You're such a cool background. You've been on such a good journey. I frankly didn't want to steal your thunder by talking too much about what you've done, and as I think we're going to get into that deeply today. As I frequently say on the show, I know you pretty damn well, but I'd love for our audience to get to know you better. Could you give a quick brief introduction on some of your background and what you're focused on today?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. First of all, super excited, huge fan of the show and of you, of course. So look, I mean, my background, I won't bore you guys with all the details, but basically I was born and raised in Brazil and moved to the US in 2001. I'm a huge nerd. I was very big into computers. I'm the kid who got kicked out of school for 9 days for hacking into the library system, like in Chicago. So I'll give you just that sort of nugget there. But I was very big into computers, very big into design, programming, then got into design. So naturally, I started working, building websites, HTML, and then I used to teach C++ at some point when I was a kid. It was like that has been my life. And then I ended up at Sapient, right? And I worked there for many years. I started managing the interactive team, overseeing everything that had to do with Flash. So thank you, Steve Jobs, for killing the entire life of mine. That's all behind me and useless today. But and then moved on into design and sort of fell in love with concepting, creating ideas for the brands that we used to work with as Sapient. And and right in the middle of that, I've always had this entrepreneurial blood because I've always worked with my dad since I was a kid. We're immigrants, so we don't shy away from building business from scratch. Is who we are as people. It's part of our blood. So while I was Sapient, I always wanted to open up all of these ideas, all of these startups, and obviously it was always tech related. I always was a huge fan of TechCrunch, and I was always coming up with some idea. But in the mix there, I opened PINCHO, and I can talk a little bit more about PINCHO in a little bit, and that's where we are.
I think this, I love that you said you loved watching, reading TechCrunch. I think a lot of entrepreneurial types, especially if they love tech, we were all obsessively, including me, reading that. And I think there's this, maybe this is why all of us wanted to go down this startup path, but I think there's this sense you can get if you read TechCrunch that that being an entrepreneur is all like popping bottles and
Right.
VCs just like, here's a briefcase of cash. You're like, just go. It's going to be great. No problem. Like, oh, super easy. You're going to be worth like $100 million in a week. Don't worry. and that is not the reality of it.
No,
And I think you've gone through that probably journey better than anyone. Yeah, so I like to focus. Even though I think Night Pro is a really cool story, I do want to focus on the PINCHO journey because I just think it's got so many interesting kind of stages to it.
right.
So let's start at the beginning. First off, you're not in the restaurant business. You just said your second. I'm a tech nerd, computer guy. Like I love digital and marketing and design and websites. How does one even get to the point that you end up starting a restaurant?
Tequila. I'm just
That's
kidding.
perfect. That's perfect.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, that makes sense.
it's look, when I first moved to Miami, because we were from Brazil, we have this Middle Eastern background. My mom's recipe for the kebabs were like a huge hit, like amongst our friends and family. And it was always, always my friends said like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Is it okay if we go to Publix and buy 2 pounds of steak and have your mom cut them up and season them and so on and so forth?" So I, always stayed in my head. So I said, one day I'm going to sell this. And then, and then it just happened that along the way prior to Sapient, I used to work at a design agency based out of Plantation, not so far from where you guys were back in the day. And we were all focused in hospitality. It was, I'm one of the guys who did the website for Towel, right? And we worked on all these big restaurants and all of these brands, and then it just became part of like a passion of mine. So I've always wanted to open a restaurant. So even though I was obsessed with technology, like hospitality, and I'm Middle Eastern, as you can tell, not super Brazilian. Hospitality is part of our blood, so it's something that I've always wanted to do. So the opportunity presented itself in the 4th of July barbecue after a couple of shots of tequila with my co-founder Nadal, and I told him, look, I've always wanted to do this brand, whereas a Latin street food brand based on my mom's recipes. And then Nidal, he was very good at cooking. He had the really good burger recipe as well. And I told him, look, let's get together. I'll do all the marketing and branding, which is my nature and who I am. And then you run the show, And obviously, I had my life as Sapient. It was never really meant to be a thing. Like if we said, let's just go open.
You didn't know it was going to be big. You thought, hey, maybe we'll have one burger joint kind of thing. I don't think you were thinking about scaling it maybe at that point.
Not at all, right? We just wanted to open one little shop and have fun, and so he can have something to do and have a good life. And I was going to be a Sapient or move on to other tech roles. And man, it just took off.
So step one of conquering your fears as a leader, we've established, is tequila. But once the tequila wears off, and you have to actually kind of find a location and really start, you're committing money. I mean, you're scrounging up whatever money you can put together to put these businesses together.
Right.
What kind of doubts did you have about yourself or the business, or what could go wrong at that stage? Because I know those probably changed at every stage, as you go through this journey, which we are going to come back to.
Well, everybody told us we were nuts. Everybody, like my parents including,
You're still nuts, by the way.
you're absolutely. I went at first, I was 25 years old at the time, 25, 26. And then I told my parents, and like, you're crazy. It's like, we came to this country so you can go to college and so you can be where you are right now, right? So you can work in the corporate world, become a VP of sorts, maybe,
Yeah. And you're trying to make burgers. What are you doing?
Start
Kind
your
of
own
thing. Yeah.
agency, what are you gonna do and open a burger joint? And it's just something that I really wanted to do, and I just wanted to own a restaurant. And then I looked on the dog. We didn't have much money.
By the way, I just want to set the tone here for anyone just for watching. How many restaurants are you up to now?
We're at 10 units now.
And how many do you think you'll have in 3 years?
Our pipeline right now is probably, hopefully, cross my fingers, to get to 30, 35.
Okay, so I just want to set context for for anyone who's watching now, what we're talking or listening right now, like, where you're at in this evolution. Please
Awesome.
continue.
Yeah. So, we didn't have money. Obviously, at the time, we had $77,000 combined between all of my life savings, his money, and we dragged his little brother in because one, we loved him, and two, we needed his savings account as well.
Really, you're a good dude. How much money have you got again?
Yeah, exactly. How much money you have? It's like 15K. Okay, you're a
You're
part.
in.
So that's basically how it started, and everybody told us how hard it's going to be, and we couldn't afford to open it where we lived by because we needed to find like a second generation restaurant that was closing down in order for us to even make $77,000 work. Because typically it will cost you $500,000 to open up a restaurant. It's not something that's cheap. So it's again, ignorance is bliss, man, and this is what I tell everyone. We were just hard headed, and we're like, no, we're gonna do it. We believe in ourselves. We're just gonna go and get it done. And then,
Because you've never been in the business, maybe they say that the restaurateur business is one of the hardest possible industries to
oh my
be. So you
God.
didn't really even understand how hard this was going to be, maybe at that stage.
And they say it for a reason, because it is a very tough business. You have to really love hospitality in order to open up a restaurant. If you don't like, this is why I say all the time, if you don't like hosting family and friends at your house every day, don't open a restaurant. Every day. Now, I'm not talking about every day, because that's what a restaurant is. You're hosting people every day. You got to go above and beyond. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it's a very fulfilling career, to be quite honest, because you get the hospitality bug, and then you walk into your restaurants, and so many people love our brand, and it's like the best feeling in the world. Like I go to the airport and I'm checking the TSA, and then they're like, oh, what do you do? Because obviously I'm Middle Eastern, and then I'm like, oh, the restaurants. They're like, they're like PINCHO Factory, like, oh, PINCHO Factory, and they're like, oh, it's just it's an incredible feeling when people recognize the brand and tell you that they love it. So but I digress. Going back to how we started, we just went for it, man. We went for it. 77,000, no experience whatsoever. We just had a hunch that we were going to be good at it, and it turned out to be a good hunch.
And so when you think about, I guess at that stage, biggest things you were worried about going wrong, just getting people into the restaurant, getting people to even care. Would you say that was maybe the biggest fear?
I think getting people to even come to you, especially if you have a challenged real estate location, was our biggest fear, because we knew we couldn't afford to be in an amazing center with Publix as an anchor, or Whole Foods, where there's a constant traffic. We settled for this little hole in the wall location in beautiful Westchester, which is an amazing town, but the real estate that we have is not the best, and it's not that visible, because Bird Road is a very busy street, but there's so many businesses, you're invisible.
You got lost in the mix.
I think that was our biggest fear, because we knew we had great food, right? It was already validated by all of our family and friends, right? And we did tastings before. We did a ton of tastings before before we launched our menu. So we knew we were going to go in with a really good product. It was just a fear of knowing how to run a restaurant, which we never did. And to be quite honest, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it later, like, we didn't know what the hell we were doing for the first 2 years. It just happened that we had great revenue, but we sucked at really running restaurants, profitable restaurants at the time.
So tell me about the moment. So as I know your journey, there was we touched on a second. There was 10 locations now. You got aspirations of 20, 25, 30 of them in the next several years. Talk to me about the scale moment when it kind of you've now established you have a good product. Okay,
Right.
you've got people to show up. You've got people to care. You think your brand's pretty cool. Food's good. Important things, and now you're saying, hey, I want to open more locations. You had to go raise money, bring investors in, like what happens at that stage, because that was fairly new territory on some degree for you, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, right. So we did one thing right. We hired a consultant to help us go from 2 to 3, because from 2 restaurants, it's easy to divide yourself between 2 restaurants. You can be here and there, in the morning you're here, at night you're there. But when you open the 3rd one, the wheels sort of come off. So you need to build systems and tools and procedures, and you need to become a real restaurant. It cannot be like, hey, one friend runs this one,
I'm
the
a
other,
real restaurant now, Dad.
right? Exactly, right? So we brought on a consultant to help us first and foremost build all of the systems and procedures and tools that we needed to be able to scale. So we were very smart when it came to that, and then we've hired a director of operations that had a ton of experience. That was the first time we hired somebody that got paid double what we got paid. So so the first time that you have to go and hire a director, right? So to me as an entrepreneur, I never hired a director. I've always hired, like when I worked at Sapien, our team, there weren't necessarily people that I've hired, the people that we were there, and it was more of a family vibe. You had all these producers, project managers that helped you, sort of manage all of these people. But now you have to go and hire somebody that you're going to pay close to $100,000 a year, and you're like, who do I hire? How do I hire?
Hurt. Yeah.
I think that was the first thing that was like very new to us. And then second, to raise money. At that stage, it's friends and family. You're still going to friends and family. You're not bringing any institutional investors because you're still too small.
I don't know about you, but friends and family is almost more scary to me than the institutional investors, because it's like, I don't want to lose Uncle Joe's money kind of thing. You know what I mean?
It's a lot more responsibility, right? And look, I take money seriously if it's from family or from investors. That's just my philosophy.
Yeah.
But, in the beginning, you believe in it so much, right? And you're young, and you're like, look, trust me, this is the best. And you have to have conviction in what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
When things are bad, and we hit like a rough patch at one point. It was very hard for me to raise money because I couldn't feel, I didn't have the confidence to raise money if that I knew I wasn't. I didn't have the business where I needed it to be. And only when I kind of fix what I needed to fix, you go back and raise money. So it's a very, there's a lot of responsibility involved, but especially with friends and family, because you don't want to let them down, so it gets a little bit tougher for sure.
So you talked a second ago about not having, it was maybe some of the confidence you needed. And I know I keep going back to this kind of concept of fear that I set up in the early part of the show, because I really want to touch on this idea of I want you to reflect on kind of these moments, like how did you get past that? Because it sounds like there's these very practical things you had to do, to the changes you had to make in the business, but there was also, I think, these changes you had to make almost in yourself as you've continued to evolve as a leader and as an entrepreneur, to go out there. And I'm hoping other people can, learn from those lessons. Is there anything you could talk about kind of at that stage of how you kind of overcame some of your fears and challenges to get where you needed to be at that stage of the business?
For sure. I've never shied away from challenges, to be quite honest. I for a very long time I struggled with imposter syndrome, and you might know.
I feel you, man. No, absolutely.
I've had that for so long, until I had to realize, okay, you know what you're doing, otherwise you wouldn't be here where you are today, and just have a little bit more confidence in making mistakes, right? And then my co-founder Nidal always says something that always stuck to me, which was, we can make mistakes, but as long as they're always new mistakes, and that's
great advice. Great advice.
We're making new mistakes, and as long as you're making new mistakes and you're pushing yourself forward, I think you're okay to keep the ball going. But every stage of mine sort of just happened so naturally, right? It wasn't like, okay, oh crap, you're gonna be the CEO now, oh crap, you're gonna do this now. They've happened naturally, that I sort of just jumped right in, and I jumped right in, and then every time I jumped right in, I remember literally I would go online and I'd be like, what makes a good CEO? Like literally just type what would make a good CEO? What would make a good CMO? I would go read job responsibilities of a CMO. This is like once upon a time, like literally
I've been there. Yeah.
What's the job responsibility of a CMO? And I'll dissect it one by one. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I can do that. Like, holy crap, I'm a CMO.
That's awesome.
Those are the things that I did, man. And then as long as whenever you fail, you're honest about it. I think everybody gets it. Just don't ever try to be the guy that or the gal that knows everything. I think I'm a huge believer that when I don't know something, And one of my team members asked me, I said, look, honestly, I don't know. I've never done that before. Why don't we do this together? I never act like I know what needs to be done, because I think it's just such an arrogant way of being a leader.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you walk right into the role and you say, look, here are all the things that I know how to do. Here are the things I need to work on it. And we're going to do this together. And it just works out.
So you know, you talked a second ago about um, looking at job descriptions, and you know, you started the business as a CMO, and you also said you looked at the job description of a CEO. What makes a good CEO? And I don't think when you started this thing, you know, you would have dreamt that you were going to be the CEO one day. If I remember correctly, you guys hired a pretty top tier CEO at one point with a bunch of very relevant experience, and then you know you were put in a situation where you needed to take over the CEO role.
Right.
Well, let's hold the COVID thing for a second because that is a whole other level of crazy that I'm looking forward to getting into. But
Right.
I'd love to hear you talk a bit about, you know, coming into the CEO role and what that. I mean, you didn't get like an MBA or something. I don't think there's like, you know, something out there that we're probably going to make you feel prepared for that. And talk about getting thrown in the deep end. I mean, like what was that like for you? And yeah, I'd love to hear about that experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, it was never really my thing. Let's go. First of all, I never thought PINCHO was going to become a 10-unit brand, and let alone we're here trying to grow nationally. You know,
And how many employees is that now?
we're close to 180 employees across the
Amazing,
system.
man. It's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, so I never really wanted to be CEO, you know, and things just sort of happened, to be quite honest. But you know, I've gotten very good at business. I was always very good at business. I mean, part of it is intuition, part of it, you know, I've lived in so many places. You know, every year in my high school was a different country, so I just have a very different, literally, I just have a very different perspective when it comes to business. You know, that very different lens. So I think, you know, I was always passionate about being a CEO, even though I wasn't one, right? Because, you know,
I didn't know that about you. That's cool.
no, it's just a thing. It was in my blood. I always, you know, I like strategy. I like growth. I like all of those things. It's not like I was, oh no, I only like marketing.
Yeah.
And I think the CMO role, the CMO role is such an important role in any brand, that you're almost like a mini CEO at the end of the day, because you're
Yeah,
coming.
I did. And you got a big responsibility. And for the record, by the way, even though I didn't know that about you, I will say that you feel like a great you feel like a CEO to me, Otto. You got
Thank
that
you.
you exude like I got this, and I think
Thank you,
that's
man.
a great thing that you know people really want to see in their leader.
Yeah, no, it means a lot. Thank you. So yeah, so when the opportunity sort of fell on my lap to be a CEO, I was a little intimidated by it. I had friends of mine that always told me, "Hey, you should be the CEO," and I always replied, "I was like, look, it's not really what I want to do right now. I like doing
And you had to follow up a guy with a pretty big
right."
pedigree to boot.
And, you know, I always said, you know, I used to quote Tupac. I used to like, "Give me the money, f the fame." I'm like, all I'm trying to do is build a successful business. I'm not trying to be famous. Like, you know, if that's, I don't want to be a CEO of the brand just because I want to be the guy who gets the credit. I don't care who gets the credit as long as we build an amazing company. That's what I, you know, simply what I was saying. And then the opportunity presented itself, and I sort of had to sort of take over, to be quite honest. And I dove right into it. You know, one of my mentors, his name is Jim Mises. He was a previous CEO of Blaze Pizza. You know, I've called him and I said, look, you know, I'm in this role right now, and I know what I need to do. Like, I know the business A to Z, right? But the one thing that I have never done was manage a leadership team. And that was the one thing I was most scared of, to be quite honest, right? I know what I need to do with my business from A to Z. I know what products I need to launch. I know how the restaurants need to run. I know it all from A to Z. But building an executive team was one thing. I was like, oh man, you know, like I've never really had to hire a CFO. I've never really had to deal with a chief operating officer. You know, how often do I need to meet with these guys? Like, do I have to have one-on-ones every week? Like, what's the KPI that I need from every person? So these were the things that were running through my mind, you know, and to be quite honest, and they're very teachable, right? Anybody can teach you, look, here's what you need to do. But that the emotional IQ, I think, is it's what you can't really teach. And I had that. I was like,
Yeah.
I can handle all of that. And so I went right into it. You know, I was a little intimidated by it because It's not something that I really wanted to do, to be quite honest, because I'm a serial entrepreneur at heart. I'm constantly innovating and creating the next business.
Mhm.
That's how my brain works. Like that's what,
Mhm.
that I, that's the one thing I love, like starting, and not necessarily scaling. And then as I've gotten very good at it, I just now absolutely love it. I'm
Yeah,
like, you know,
I think there's all different types of CEOs, though. You'll find, there are CEOs that come up through the CFO path or the CEO path, and they may be very operationally centric or financially centric. And then you'll see, sales and marketing centric CEOs, and very frequently they tend to fall more on the kind of like visionary side of the spectrum.
right,
And it's nice to be able to come up with big ideas and then know that you have the power and influence to really make your dreams reality, and I can see how that could be really fulfilling.
right. The one thing the one, when I look at myself as CEO, this is what I say. My job as a CEO is to facilitate everyone else's job. That's my
Hmm.
job. I'm a team player. I go into this meeting, I'm like, okay, how can I help you? I go into this meeting, how can I help you? And I'm constantly just moving the ball forward. And it's a lot of fun because then I get to, work with everyone, and, from marketing to ops to culinary. And man, I absolutely love it now. It's not something that I wanted to do, but it's sort of happened. And I was telling my sister this the other day, and it's a quote from Mark Cuban. And I don't want to quote Mark Cuban, but he said that, passion sometimes, when you become very good at something, you become passionate about it. It's not necessarily that I was always passionate about being a CEO. I just happened to become a CEO and then realize, I'm like, oh man, I really enjoy doing this. I'm really good at it. And now I'm extremely passionate about it. So I kind of
So,
developed.
so, we have to go back to this. So you're going into it. It sounds like one of it kind of summarizes some of the advice is, you had fears about the unknown and maybe not knowing what you didn't know, but you took steps to get, learn from mentors, do the research, and fill any knowledge gaps you had, and you just took it head on. And
Right,
then COVID hit, which no one on earth could have prepared for,
right.
because no one alive anyway, because no one's gone through a global pandemic, in close to 100 years. You're in a business that was, in many cases, during it's shut down. They literally wouldn't let people into your physical locations. Um, how did you guys deal with that? And if you don't mind me asking, like, how did the business do? I mean, were you guys able to navigate that successfully? What did your 2020 look like? And we've had some crazier shit stories about this over the last year. I know yours is a good one.
At this moment, I couldn't go to Google and say pandemic 101, how to deal with a pandemic. Zero results, right? There was no job responsibilities for a pandemic director of a pandemic. So, so it, honestly, man, without sounding cheesy, I just did what I thought was right, and I led from a source of strength instead of source of fear. And I literally told myself, I'm like, look, if we're gonna go down, I'm gonna go down swinging. If I'm gonna go down, I'm just gonna do what is right by my team, and I'm just gonna make decisions that are based on making sure that everybody's protected and everybody's safe. And I'll deal with the money later. I'll deal with the consequences later. I spoke to some friends that have other restaurants here locally, just for advice. Hey, what do we do? And everybody's like, oh, you gotta, furlough as many people as you can and preserve your cash and ride this out.
Mhm.
And that just didn't sit right with me, to be quite honest. I literally sat here, I opened up my computer. This is the first time I do a Zoom call with all of my team. We've never done a Zoom call. I'm like, okay, let's just do this whole Zoom thing. I think it wasn't even Zoom. It was Google Meet. Zoom wasn't even a thing, actually. It was day one. Zoom was still not a public company. uh,
Wow.
so I told everybody, I'm like, look, we've never been through this. It's scary. But here's what I'm going to tell you. And this is a race. We're going through the desert, right? We've been at this race for 10 years now, right? We're going through the desert. We have X amount of water. We're going to share it between each other, and we're just gonna ride it out. If it
Mhm.
means some of you guys are going to get a little bit less hours, that so be it. But I'm not furloughing anyone. I'm not going to furlough not even one team member. We're
Mhm.
just gonna make sure we take care of each other. I'm like, if anybody gets sick,
That's
and this
huge, man.
there was no PPP at this time. Nobody had what a PPP was. We didn't know anything. So I told them, I'm like, guys, if somebody gets sick, stay home. Uh, I'm not gonna promise you that I'm gonna be able to pay you for 2 weeks, but here's what I'm gonna promise you. I will deliver food for you and your kids every day for 14 days. You guys are not gonna go hungry. You deal with your landlord later, but we're a restaurant group. You're not gonna go hungry. That's the
That's
first
huge,
thing
man. That's
for
really
everyone.
wonderful.
For everyone, and then I told my team, I'm like, if we have to send it via DoorDash, it is what it is, right? I said, for anybody that's a parent, if you have kids at home and they're not in school, you can take, not only you can take free food for yourself, but now you can take food for your family every day. I don't care if you have 15 kids, God bless you. Take food for your kids every day because you don't have to worry about feeding your kids at home. We did that for 5 months, by the way. Every day, any team member at PINCHO was able to take food for their family, for their kids. It was just, it was like, look, we're just going to take care of each other. I'll deal with the landlords. I'll
It's
deal with,
actually one of the nicest things
yeah,
I've heard anyone do
you
during
know,
COVID, honestly.
right. And then I said, I set up an emergency fund with my own money. I'm like, look, I'm going to set up an emergency fund. If anything happens to anyone, just hit me up, call me. Your car gets towed. You can't pay your bills. You can't pay your electricity, whatever. Just call me. We'll figure this out. And then lastly, I said, here's what we're going to do for the community. We always give back to first responders. It's sort of part of who we are. It's always, they always got
Yep.
under now. We said we're going to give a 50% off for first responders and hospital workers. Anybody working in the hospital, if you're the doctor, if you're part of the cleaning crew, whatever, if you work at Baptist, Palmetto, whatever, you can come in every day, 50% off. And then I went to Instagram. And then I said, and then we started acting like a source of strength, like a community, right? We started like broadcasting, like, hey, Pete, we call them PINCHO updates. PINCHO updates. Here's what we're doing for our team. PINCHO updates. Here's what we're doing for the community. And then when we said 50% off for hospital workers and first responders, it went viral. And it went viral locally. And believe it or not, because of all of the press we've gotten for that act of kindness, our sales did not tank like everybody else. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I have to put up this quote. Our number one fan, Masayoshi, always tunes in for a ship every week. He's always very engaged in chat, and he's got what leadership, Otto. I love everything you just said. All block letters. Marcel and I do get to work together, and he's given me some very nice compliments about leadership over the last year. And I think you may have just bumped me from my cool kid spot. And now I didn't know I had competition with Marcel, but now apparently I do, Otto. So yeah, that's huge, man. I can't say enough good things about what you just said, and I love, not because it was a marketing ploy or something. I love that you became the center of your community, and you did the right thing, and by doing the right thing, the business followed.
Absolutely.
So that's the positive side.
Right.
What was the craziest ship moment in terms of the business kind of not going as predicted, maybe due to COVID and so on, that you couldn't have predicted?
I mean, there's a couple. I'm trying to pick which ones are the best ones. But the first one, which ends up being the fact that we were doing okay, because we weren't doing great. We were doing okay. Our sales took a 25% dip for a couple of weeks, but we were the only restaurant that was doing okay. So when it came to our meat supplier, our chicken supplier, everybody, we get our beef fresh from New Jersey. They couldn't service us. So we're here saying, okay, wait, we have a restaurant that's doing okay, but we can't get beef in the building. We can't get chicken in the building.
If you have a restaurant.
Dude, it was like, I was like, wait, what? I'm here thinking like, okay, we're amazing. And then all of a sudden we have to switch our entire distribution channel mid-pandemic. We had to start, like, we were receiving like all of the merchandise into one restaurant, and then our team had to become distributors. So we had to drive around and deliver product to our restaurants. Dude, it was a shit show. It was crazy. And I'm here thinking like, I think it's like, okay, we're doing amazing, we're gonna do awesome, but then we couldn't service our guests.
Oh no! Did they give you any warning, or did you just get like cut off one day and have to deal with it afterwards?
It just cut off. It's not warning, is because they had their own team members that weren't
Yeah,
going
they're
to
trying to
work.
get people to
We're
work
going to
and
work.
get
There was,
orders. Wow.
Jersey at the time wasn't a great place to be in either. So all of these crazy things, and we're like scrambling to find food. And then
Wow.
all of a sudden, gloves. People that gloves. The case was $20, and all of a sudden they're $130. And you're
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? And we
Think about that. Like just the stuff that people making food with all of a sudden becomes like the most
right.
valuable commodity on
And
earth.
then
Holy.
takeout packaging. We're like, oh, sorry, guys, we don't have burger boxes for you anymore. So like, how am I going to sell burgers? It's like, sorry, there's a shortage of takeout packaging because everybody is going to go. So there was all these little things. Every other week there was an oh shit moment, to be quite honest. But I think the craziest one, which is actually a good oh shit moment, because of my background in technology, we were so lucky that for 9 months prior to COVID, we built our entire technology stack. We were, man, we were that crazy guy that believes that zombies are going to come and has all that food in the basement. We were that in terms of tech.
You went full prepper, Otto?
We were, we were so ready. I had all of the integration set up. We were super early adopters of third-party delivery like Uber Eats, Postmates, DoorDash.
Oh,
Everything,
that's so good.
everything was amazing. We had just built our mobile app, and I was actually part of the team who designed the UX for the mobile app because of my background. So we were so well set up that when the city said, the city had said they were going to close the dining rooms, right? And I said, let's just close the dining rooms before anybody tells us to. That's it. Let's just go to a takeout window mode, and let's just push everyone towards our digital. Everyone towards our digital channel. Not the third-party deliveries. Let's push everybody towards the PINCHO mobile app. And man, it was amazing. It was the best thing ever. So like our digital sales, actually we were 25% of our sales were delivery. When this hit, our delivery only went to 35. All the other sales went to our own channels, which was amazing. We have all of the data and all of that. But then the O-ship moment was on 420. So imagine, what, pandemic was like 3/12, 3/16, like May 16th, March 16th, I think it was. On 420, our sales were okay, but I needed a boost, and I knew digital was the name of the game. So I went to my team, and I'm like, look, it's 420. Everybody's in a funk. We need to drive our digital sales. I'm like, you know what? $4.20 burgers, any burger for 420 across the board, as long as you buy it via our app. So that way, we show some love to South Florida, and also we drive adoption of our mobile app, right, and our loyalty. And because of the way that we design our mobile app and our sign up, if you place an order with us online, you automatically become a loyalty member. Like you can't you can't check out as a guest. So I'm like, okay, amazing. We'll get some signups. We'll start driving that. What I didn't realize was how powerful PINCHO brand was locally.
Yeah.
And brother, when I tell you, we ran out of food by 7 p.m. across all restaurants. Our team completely hated me. Hated me. We've signed up thousands of people to our loyalty on that day. I was at Publix at 6:30 buying American cheese and buying lettuce because I was trying to, like, the Sunrise location, which is the one close to you. I was trying to like deliver food there, and everybody's like blowing up my phone. It was just insane.
I love that, by the way. I love that people don't get this. When you're the CEO, you're doing wacky stuff like going to Publix to buy any meat you can get hold of just so the food doesn't come out. People don't get this. I always joke like as your CEO, I've assembled more desks than anyone I've ever met. I've cleaned the microwave more times than anyone ever met.
Oh yeah, it was nuts, man. I was there like,
man.
and because we've learned this the hard way, there's this thing on online ordering called order throttling, in which if a lot of orders go every 15 minutes, you can throttle the orders to go to the next 15 minutes, to the next 30 minutes. So if you get 100 orders right now, you don't have to make them all at once. You can space them out within 2 hours. And we had never turned that on. So when it was 12 o'clock, we literally got over 1,000 orders across the system in 1 hour. And then people are like, what the hell's going on? And then everybody's calling me like, Otto, what did you do? I was like, ah, and I'm like,
That's incredible. Good,
nuts.
good for you. You know, hearing all this, I have to ask: is your life been very different from what you'd imagined it would have been if you can go back in time, or is this kind of fulfilling everything exactly as you'd planned it?
Well, I think, when I first, one of the scariest things for me was to make the move from corporate world to full on entrepreneur, right? So I went from making some decent money, I had just gotten married to my wife and we had like a really nice apartment in Brickell. So all of a sudden, hey, I know we just got married and it's been 6 months. I'm going to move back in. I'm going to move back in with my parents and I'll take you with me. And I'm going to go work at PINCHO. And my salary the first year is going to be 15,000. And then the second year is going to be 35,000, and then we're just going to roll with it. So I think that was the craziest thing. So
That is crazy.
the first 3 years I basically didn't have a salary, and I moved back in with my parents. Imagine
Okay.
28-year-old guy and moving back in with my parents. Just got married to my wife.
Yeah.
God bless her. She's the best.
Hey, shout out to the parents out there. A lot of people don't know this. And
There
when
you go.
when I the year I started Chameleon Collective, I had quit a job I really hated. I just happened to be I had to move in with my in-laws
Right.
because I had moved back from New York and I'd sold my house to move up to New York for this crazy job I had. And I honestly think if I wasn't living with my in-laws,
Right.
just because we just hadn't got a place, but because we had no expenses, that gave me the confidence to go,
Crazy.
say maybe we should do this crazy company thing. So that no, it's slow clap for all the parents out there who help their entrepreneurial,
My,
sons and daughters.
my my parents, like PINCHO wouldn't exist if it wasn't for my co-founders and his wife. Nadal and Crystal did an incredible job in the first 2 years, just hustling, making it happen. But then also PINCHO would not exist if it wasn't for the fact that I would be able to also leave and go help them, continue building this thing, because my parents are just amazing, man. They're like, okay, cool, we'll deal with you. We'll deal with you for another 3 years and pay your bills. But when I look at my life, sometimes I look back and I'm like, okay, I'm a pretty ambitious dude, so I probably would have kept moving on up within Sapient, gone to a, some sort of VP role, or probably would have left for another tech company, another startup, some sort of product role, some sort of creative direction role, or bounce around from a ad agency to ad agency, which is probably what everybody wants to do if you're in the ad world, right? And probably would have made really good money. But honestly, man, if I were to go back, I would take this route 1,000 times versus staying
I
in
love
in
that.
in the creative world. I mean, man, it's the
So,
ups and downs that makes it fun. It's all the craziness and the stress levels. One day you're amazing, one day you're like, oh fuck, what did I do? Like,
yeah.
oh, I wish I had a paycheck right now. So it's
So if given that these journeys can be unpredictable, when someone goes out there and they, someone wanted to pursue a career similar to yours, what advice would you give them?
well, I think first and foremost is I think you need to start slow, right? So one thing that I did was I didn't just quit Sapient day one. I quit Sapient 2 years into PINCHO, and when we already had a business that did about $2 million in revenue. So it's a very different story. So I think if you're somebody that works in the creative world and or not or anywhere, in the corporate world, dude, start as your side hustle. Make sure that you're getting some sort of traction. Just don't quit and say, look, I have an idea for this new product that's gonna innovate a household, and then just go all in. No, build in don't
Yeah,
watch, not to quote Gary Vee, which he's too quoted, but the one thing is there's always time for you to build something. It's the nights and weekends, right? It's the nights and weekend. It's
great
being
advice.
is it's called discipline, man. It's discipline of saying, I'm gonna go home after work. I'm gonna hang out with my family. If I have, let's say if you're married, if you're not, you're gonna spend time with your family and your kids, and then you're gonna say, all right, great, I gotta go do this, and if you're really passionate about it, as Freddie, anybody that's part of our world, when we worked, till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning in an ad agency, it's not like this crazy. Oh my God, I hate it here. You love it, so you're there. I mean, it sucks, but you're there till 2, 3 in the morning, and it goes by.
Yeah,
Do you want to be there till 2, 3 in the morning? You don't, but you just enjoy the work. So
yeah,
if you're going to be an entrepreneur, I think that's the number one advice is get some sort of validity first of what your idea is. and then have a strong support system, either parents or some sort of savings, and do it little by little, little by little. You don't have to quit and just do it all at once, and look, PINCHO wasn't my first business that was successful. I failed like 5 times before PINCHO.
Yeah, I would say I've got 3 or 4 businesses that I talk
Exactly.
about.
That
God knows if I
didn't
could
go
count
anywhere. But
some,
but but
some fans along the way.
but what I'm telling you is the more rewarding feeling of being an entrepreneur is being your own boss and being
Mhm.
able to create something, for me at least, that many people will love. That
Mhm.
as a marketer, like just seeing how many people love PINCHO is like the best feeling in the world. It really is. Like, I know it sounds cheesy, but it's like everybody knows PINCHO and they love it. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask one final question before. It's been a really fun episode, by the way. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting with it, as I always do. And I was thinking about how the episode started, and me talking about kind of knowing you from Sapien. It's just you were a cool creative guy, in the creative studio, not really understanding this incredible journey that you were going to go on.
Right.
Um, do you remember what your first memory of me was? I'm trying to think about when we first met her, and I've always been a bit of a nut. I had great hair
Yeah.
back then. That's one thing I
Right.
remember. But other than that, I'd love to know what my first impression, what impression I left on you way back then.
I actually do vaguely, but I do. This was when we were at the Sapien office in the one that was really far. What was the name?
The, like Cutler Ridge or whatever it
Oh
was.
yeah,
We,
the Color Bay one, like by Eureka, right? It's the end of
yeah,
the world.
yeah.
It was the old BK offices, and we had just Sapien had just acquired your company, and you guys were coming to the office for the first time. And I'm like, oh, look at all these wannabe awesome Flash developers. We had a Flash team. We're like, oh, here we go. And it was Alex Toledo and his cool tattoo, and Caesar and all these guys. And then I went outside, and once upon a time I used to smoke cigarettes and I don't anymore. But I went outside for a quick cigarette break. And then you were there, and I think you were wearing like a fedora or something. I don't know. Maybe you were wearing like a
You
hat.
got, like one of these, my classic. I'm always wearing my
There you
flat
go.
cap. Yeah.
There you go. That was there.
There, I'll put you back into the moment.
It all came back. It all came back. And I'm there. I'm listening to you guys talk to each other, and I'm just in the corner just listening in, and I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking to myself, and don't be offended by this, because I love you dearly. You're a dear friend of mine. But I'm like, where is he from? I'm like, that accent. It's like he's like, is he American trying to sound British? Like, is this guy
Story
really
of my
just,
life, man. Story of my life with my weird
you know what I
accent.
mean? I was like, wait, is he like, is he one of those guys that went to
Am I
school?
Madonna? Am I going full Madonna on you and basically like you doing the like, faux London accent? Love
There
it.
you go. Is he one of those guys that go to Spain and all of a sudden says Ibiza? Or like, did he go to like London for one summer and now all of a sudden he's like, oh, water? And that's what I remember.
That's amazing.
But then I introduced myself to you guys, and then I got to meet you guys. I'm like, holy crap, these guys are amazing. They're very cool. And then we had looked up to you guys ever since. And
It's feels mutual, man. This is too
yeah,
funny. I make
it feels
my face right now. I'm turning red from laughing. Sorry. Yeah, no, I didn't go full Madonna on you. I promise.
no, that was amazing.
That's a great, very entertaining way to end this week's episode. Otto, thanks so much for coming on. You've such a fun story. I know whether people are watching the show live now or they're catching up with us after on YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, LinkedIn, or any of the other places that we've been broadcasting and we show our show. I know they're going to enjoy this one. For those of you that are watching, please support the show. The best thing you can do to support us and get us to produce more content like this is, give us a like, give us a share, comment, tell your friends. It's not something we do for any other reason than just trying to share great, inspiring leaders with everyone out there that maybe needs a lift or needs a little bit of inspiration in their day. So hope to see you next week. Thank you for watching. Otto, thanks again for being on the show, and see you next week on O Ship.
Take care. Thank you, brother.